These are the top 10 deadliest dictators to ever exist in human history. Number 10. Bashar al-Assad. Born in 1965 in Damascus, Syria, Bashar didn't always want to be a bloodthirsty political murder weapon. Nope, quite the opposite. He was initially training to be a doctor and was not ready or raised to be a leader. But with the death of his father and later on his older brother Basil, Bashar was suddenly thrown into the highest position of power in Syria, assuming control of an authoritarian regime in the year 2000. Hopes for reform under his rule quickly dissipated into thin air as his government cracked down on dissent, eventually blowing up during the 2011 Arab Spring protests, which later escalated into a brutal civil war. Assad's forces were ruthless with their tactics, indiscriminately bombing civilian areas using barrel bombs, unleashing chemical weapon attacks like those in Ghouta and Khan Sheikhan, and sieging populations long enough for them to starve. His regime also detained, tortured, and executed tens of thousands, while pro-government militias carried out massacres. With military assistance coming from Iran and Russia, because of course it did, Assad's government regained control of Syria, despite every other nation telling him that he was being a massive douchebag. Where at the end of the Syrian civil war, he became responsible for the deaths of an estimated 500,000 to 1 million people, with him and his regime still holding Syrian political power till this day. Number 9. Saddam Hussein. Born in 1937 and hailing from Al-Wajah, Iraq, little Saddam, like many other children in Iraq, came from a turbulent childhood, but he would later grow up to become one of the 20th century's most infamous leaders. After joining the Ba'ath Party in the 1950s and surviving a failed assassination attempt on General Abdul Karim Qasim, Saddam would spend years in exile before playing a key role in the Ba'ath Party's 1968 coup, where he would become vice president and later seize full control in 1979, establishing his own ruthless dictatorship. And then he would do what all dictators do, which is execute, torment, and use chemical weapons on other unsuspecting human beings. He was most infamous in the Halabja massacre against the Kurds during the Anfal campaign and crushed dissent with imprisonment, torture, and mass killings, including the violent suppression of the 1991 Shia uprising, leaving behind mass graves and amassing an estimated kill count of 250,000 to 1 million people. But sadly for Saddam, he didn't learn who made the rules in this world, where he was accused of harboring weapons of mass destruction and was toppled by the US-led invasion in 2003. After being captured, he was tried for crimes against humanity and executed in 2006. Number 8. Mengistu Haile Mariam. In Walaita, Ethiopia in 1937, a baby was born, and let's just say he grew up loving the color red. A lot. Mengistu Haile Mariam rose to power through means of climbing the Ethiopian military ladder, eventually leading a Marxist-Leninist faction known as the Derg to overthrow Emperor Haile Selassie in 1974. And as the Derg's dominant figure, Mengistu created a government that was marked by the Red Terror, and a campaign that saw the mass execution and torture of tens of thousands of perceived political opponents. I didn't even know you could have that many politicians. At that point, he was just killing class presidents and student council members too. His Marxist policies and poor management only increased the devastating famine in the 1980s, resulting in hundreds of thousands of people losing their lives. Mengistu's rule was also marked by many wars, including the Eritrean War of Independence and the Ogaden War with Somalia. Luckily for the people of Ethiopia, his government was overthrown by rebel forces in 1991, where Mengistu fled to Zimbabwe. In absentia, which is just a trial without the defendant, he was convicted of genocide and crimes against humanity in 2006 and sentenced to death in 2008. But he still remains sheltered in Zimbabwe, evading extradition, allowing a man with 400,000 to 1.5 million kills to roam free and still kick it. Number 7. Kim Il-sung. The great-grandpappy of Kim Jong-un was born in 1912, being of course from North Korea. Rising to power through his anti-Japanese guerrilla warfare during World War II, after Japan's defeat in 1945, he gained Soviet support to become the leader of North Korea, establishing himself as supreme leader in 1948. Kim Il-sung initiated the Korean War in 1950 with the hope to unify the peninsula under communist rule, but we all know that ended with a stalemate. Down the line of his rule, North Korea became a totalitarian state, which was made by making himself look like a god with the ideology of Juche, meaning self-reliance. To consolidate power, Kim Il-sung conducted purges, suppressed uprisings with secret police and harsh labor camps, and controlled information and media. His economic and social policies made it hard for anybody to live comfortably in North Korea, and they still do, which is why I don't understand when North Korea makes their country look like a happy and fun place when everybody already knows that it's not. That's like someone having an axe in their face saying that they've never felt better. Kim Il-sung ruled until his death in 1994, ending the game with a KD of 1.6 to 3 million to 1, establishing a dynastic succession with his son Kim Jong-il, and later on his grandson Kim Jong-un, who still continues this regime's authoritarian system till this day. Number 6. Pol Pot. Even though he has a fun name to pronounce, he himself was not a fun guy. Pol Pot, born Saloth Sar in 1925 in Cambodia, was a leader of the Khmer Rouge and orchestrated one of the most brutal genocides of the 20th century. He grew up hitting the books, where he was educated in Phnom Penh and in Paris, but I guess he was only hitting the books that had red covers on it because he loved the idea of communism, where upon returning to Cambodia became a prominent figure in the Khmer Rouge. After years of civil war, the Khmer Rouge finally overthrew the Cambodian government in 1975 and established a radical Argarian regime, seeking to create a classless society, which sounds good on paper, right? Well, it sounds good on paper because that's the only place that it works, since he would forcibly relocate urban populations to rural areas, resulting in the deaths of an estimated 1.7 to 2 million people through starvation, forced labor, and executions, particularly targeting intellectuals and ethnic minorities. He would even kill people who wore glasses because they looked too smart. Ching chong late. Ching chong bing gong, ching ching kong bing ding dong bing gong gyang gong bing bing ching. This indiscriminate line of thinking allowed Pol Pot's final kill count to be around 1.5 to 3 million people, but luckily for everyone involved, Pol Pot's regime was eventually overthrown by the Vietnamese in 1979. But he still continued to lead the Khmer Rouge as a guerrilla force until he was arrested in 1997, where he died wallowing in his own failures during his time under house arrest in 1998. Number 5. Hideki Tojo. He was a Japanese military leader and politician born in 1884, being educated at the Imperial Japanese Army Academy, so it comes as no surprise that he liked killing things and that he was very much in love with his country. Tojo quickly advanced through the ranks, becoming chief of staff of the Kwantung Army and playing a key role in the invasion of China. His influence peaked when he was appointed Prime Minister of Japan in 1941, overseeing Japan's expansionist policies and the attack on Pearl Harbor. But what he didn't know is that the US really liked those boats. He was able to get away with it for a while, where he tortured prisoners and civilians, caused the massacre of Nanking, committed many other war crimes, and racked up 5 to 8 million kills. But as we all know, the US eventually bombed the masculinity out of Japan and arrested Tojo, where he was tried by the International Military Tribunal for the Far East for war crimes and executed by hanging in 1948. Number 4. Leopold II of Belgium. Born of royal blood, Leopold II of Belgium ascended to the throne in 1865 at the age of 30. Originally, he was an alright king, focusing on reforms and infrastructure in Belgium. But good things don't just happen, they are achieved by the exploitation of the Congo Free State, which he personally controlled in 1885. Posing as a humanitarian, ironic, I know, Leopold II's regime subjugated the Congolese population to extreme forced labor and brutal violence, including mass killings and amputations, all in the pursuit of rubber, ivory, and of course human happiness. The exploitation of the Congo left 10 to 15 million dead, which understandably didn't make too many people happy, where he got exposed by activists and journalists, leading Leopold II to forcibly relinquish control of the Congo in 1908. But it became a Belgian colony anyway, so how much did he really lose? He died from embolism in 1909. Funnily enough, his funeral was booed by the crowd. I think it's funny that he was only booed after his death, like booing him would hurt his feelings or something. Number 3. Adolf Hitler. You know him. I hope none of you love him. It's Hitler. This one is going to be a quick one because, like many people, YouTube doesn't even like hearing his name. Born in 1889 in Austria, after failing to gain entry into art school in Vienna, he was like, "Was ist das? I'm gonna start murdering people." And so he did. He moved to Munich and served as a soldier in World War I, where he was wounded and missed the rest of the war. But post-World War I, he joined and transformed the German Workers' Party into the Nazi Party, using propaganda to gather supporters. Appointed Chancellor in 1933, Hitler quickly consolidated power through the Reichstag Fire Decree and the Enabling Act, establishing a totalitarian regime with him at its center. With him holding supreme power over Germany, Hitler did Hitler things, starting the Second World War, causing the Holocaust, and causing the death of about 17 to 20 million humans. And as World War II started to end and the Allies closed in, Hitler retreated to his bunker in Berlin, where he and his wife, Eva Braun, committed suicide in 1945. It's interesting to see how a not blonde-haired and blue-eyed half-Austrian man was able to convince the German population that he was their great leader. If only his art skills compared to his manipulative prowess, then we would probably have a lot more people on this planet. Number 2. Joseph Stalin. Born in 1878 and coming from Georgia, Stalin involved himself with the Bolshevik faction of the Communist Party, and through strategic maneuvering following Lenin's death in 1924, became the leader of the USSR. As General Secretary of the Communist Party, Stalin consolidated his power by eliminating rivals like Leon Trotsky and implementing brutal policies. His regime was marked by the Great Purge, which saw thousands executed or imprisoned, but I guess he was dissatisfied with only killing thousands because he wanted to kill way more people than that. So he caused a famine, leading millions of people to starvation. He also established a vast gulag system where millions suffered and died under harsh conditions. And to make sure he stayed in power, Stalin employed extensive political repression, surveillance, and censorship through secret police. Stalin's killing only stopped with the end of his life in 1953, where he murdered an astonishing 20 to 30 million people at the end of it all. You know what? I don't see why Stalin isn't seen as much as a villain as Hitler was, because he was just as bad, if not worse. Number 1. Mao Zedong. What seems to be a nice old man was actually one of the most bloodthirsty human beings on this planet. Born in 1893 in Shaoshan, China, Mao rose to prominence as a revolutionary leader and the founding figure of the People's Republic of China. Initially joining the Chinese Communist Party in 1921, Mao's leadership was solidified during the Long March of 1934 to 1935, which enabled the Chinese Communist Party to establish a strong base in Yan'an. After World War II, Mao led the Chinese Communist Party to victory over the Kuomintang in the Chinese Civil War, creating the People's Republic of China in 1949. His governance included policies like the Great Leap Forward, which led to widespread famine and millions of deaths. He also made the Cultural Revolution, which caused severe social and economic disruption and resulted in millions of deaths. As you can probably see, Mr. Mao wasn't too good at making policies. Mao's death in 1976 left a strange legacy, because he is recognized for unifying China, but he was also a massive codhead, leaving the world with 40 to 80 million less people than it started out with. As most of you probably already knew, dictators are not nice people, but if you want to go down in history as a powerful and influential figure, go check out this guide video that I made. Anyway, thank you all for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe, Poppy, and I'll see you in another episode.